falling into that. Oh no. So do not you can hand tighten to save yourself some time, but make sure you go in with the Allen wrench, tighten that down so that your tool is secure, this is secure in here, and everything else. So now this is just basic machining. This is an adjustable cross feed, so we can swing this around, and I'll get into that in a minute. But this right now, since it's in alignment this way, does the same thing as this. I know it seems like redundant, and you're like, why do you have two things doing the same thing? But this will actually swing on an angle, so we'll do that. Now some people, I really like machining. Some people hate machining because it's like a grungy, dirty thing. So I'm like, oh, I haven't even done anything yet. And I'm like a dirt magnet, though. It's like, I'm amazed I don't already have grease on my face, which I may already have, and that's why, I don't know. So you want to make sure that things are not touching, because what will happen is, this is kind of the typical beginner's mistake, is you'll be really focused on your work that you're doing right here, and you'll forget that this chuck has the jaws that are spinning, and so you'll be working here, and you'll be like doing this stuff, you'll be doing that, and then doing this, and then one of these jaws that's spinning will like whack into the corner of one of your tool rests. So that is the stereotypical beginner's mistake, and it's like, it's bad. I mean, it's not horrible, like fatality bad, but it's damaging to the machine. It's really scary to you, so just be very conscious of that you're not going to have any traffic collisions. So it's really tough because I know you're going to be focused right here on this end and not worrying about the rest of the machine. What I would suggest with any of these new processes, you guys are already subdivided into 3 groups. So within your groups, I would at least get one buddy that you're going to just be working with. So you'll help each other out and double check and say like, all right, do I have the right wires connected to the right place for electroforming? What did James say about like collisions? I know it was like scary, but I don't know what that was. So, it's just that you can check out and say like, all right, does this look good to you? Yeah, I think everything looks good to me. All right, fine. So you want to make sure that the tool is not actually touching your piece, but everything is secure in there. And you can put, of course, if that oil worked. Do we have like a little oil over by the drill press? Or that like lighter oil that we have too will work fine. I hate like spraying the WD-40, but we can do that too. Do we have like a little no, that's a little... Alright, so this is not ideal, but ideally you just have like a little bit of oil there, but you can just put, inevitably with like demos, right? Did? Yeah. So, of course, why? It shouldn't, there we go. There we go. Okay, so, I mean, this is a little bit messier by spraying, but you can just put a little bit on there. We're ready. Which way am I going to throw this? Yay! You missed that part when I was over at the bench grinder, that during demos you have the invisible face shield, because then you can't feel anything I'm saying when I have like a face shield in, because like this is there that you hear, and it sounds way too much like a Charlie Brown teacher voice. So you have the face shield and all other loose things tied back and all that other kind of stuff for rotating equipment. So you have that. You don't need to necessarily worry about all these other neat kind of things going on. This is like the milling attachment and different speeds and stuff like that. The speed that we have it set at should be pretty much fine for what you guys need to deal with, so we don't need to worry about the speed of the machine. Now it says on there, always heed speed and feed. So there's 2 things that you have control over with machining: speed and feed. So speed is what rate this is rotating, and feed is how quickly you're feeding your tool into the material. So what I would say for your initial machine experience and everything is, don't mess with the speed. Just go real slow with your feed, and that's fine. Just FYI, like in the world and proper machining technique and things like that, the smaller your diameter of material, the faster you want things to go. Now, all of this applies to any machining process, and you may be thinking this big scary machine is machining, and that's how it's being called and everything else. drilling holes is a machining process. Using a carving burr with a flex shaft is a machining process. So this is all that kind of subtractive carving. Those are all machining processes. So if you think about, like, with drilling holes in material, it's better, the smaller your drill bit, the faster you want to go. It will actually cut better, as opposed to big honkin' drill bits. You want to really crank your speed way down. So it's just that generally for you guys, it's a more intuitive ratio between speed and feed. You just kind of learn these things. It's like, oh, if I'm like drilling a teeny little hole with my flex shaft, I really floor it so that the drill bit doesn't get hung up in there and I can drill that hole through there, as opposed to with the drill press, I'm drilling a bigger hole, I go a bit slower, and you may like even just automatically feed the drill bit slower through your material or something like that. So you guys kind of intuitively should already know this from those like bajillions of holes that you've drilled already in your previous metals experience. So it's the same kind of thing here, it's just a little bit reversed because the material you're cutting is rotating and the tool is not. So we have that on, this is secure, and then that 0 point, you just dial it in and it just grazes. So I'm not actually cutting, but it's just touching. So for general machining, you can just feed in to just trim there, and then you can feed across. And it'll just start removing material. And I'm just kind of dialing back. And you'll figure out which way does what. So, turning away from you moves it that way. Turning towards you moves this way. And you'll just like with the Etch-a-Sketch, you'll sort of very quickly, intuitively remember that. So there's no point like writing that down. Same with the cross feed here. Going counterclockwise moves it towards you. Going clockwise moves it towards the work. Since the material is rotating this way, just like with polishing, you are always going to have the cutting tool in front of the material. So you're never going to be coming back. That's where you get into reversing the machine and all this other kind of stuff. So you can, but that gets into more advanced machining that you don't want to necessarily get it right into. But just for right now, you're going to be cutting with the tool in front of it and having it go forward and coming down onto your tool. So that was just removing a little bit of material. And that's just basically just kind of reducing the diameter. Now, one thing that people forget is as you're cutting material, you're removing twice as much. Like if you're just plunging into it, if you're like working on your chest piece or something like that, like as you're cutting on the front, it's cutting, it's spinning around. You're cutting on the back too. Does this make sense? You guys get that? All right. Okay. So you'll see what I mean. Like when you start doing it, you're like, oh, it'll get smaller a lot faster than you think it will.
But you're removing like a paper thickness at a time.
Yeah, you're 10,000ths of an inch, which is about the thickness of paper. You're just kind of trimming that off. You're probably what you might see in like YouTube videos and everything else, those big shavings and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to be there. Sorry to like crush your dreams on that, but you're not going to be taking off that kind of material. Probably it'll end up being this sort of powdery stuff. See this? We all know how to use this. I don't think I need to demo this. This is why it's there. You want to clean up your shit? I don't think we're going to get like really good shavings off here. I can do some for people if they need them for like the holiday ornament thing. Try to anticipate and avoid collisions. Sanding. All right, so I have on here finishing. Sanding while the part is still on the lathe is possible if done carefully. All caps, exclamation point. So we'll talk about your individual pieces if you want to do that or you feel confident about that, but that's a you have to be very, very careful about that because you're moving this tool away and you're putting your hands next to the rotating piece of equipment. Chatter or noise is the primary indication of something wrong. Some heat will be generated, but no material, whether it's your brass or your steel, should change color. If it is, you're generating way too heat and something is way wrong. So the tool could be damaged, and you may or may not be able to figure out what it is that is wrong. But the usual suspects of something being wrong are dull tooling or you have a poor setup. Okay, so that's just general kind of machining.
How do you fix dull tooling?
They're not going to.
Okay.
Is that what
Bring it to your teacher, me, and deal with that. What's that?
These would have to be reordered.
Yeah, with the carbides, we're not going to get into regrinding the carbide tools. I probably spent several weeks, like when I did my night school thing, I spent several weeks like grinding tools. Like that's all I did is I stood at the bench grinder, and because there's all these angles and like chip breaking angles and rake angle, all this kind of complex geometry, and you're holding this teeny little thing up against a bench grinder. I'm like, I don't want to grind my knuckles.